Drum Berkaya, presenting a little bit about myself for Bodrum H3A Association, which I'm quite proud to be a member of, and quite intimidated by giving this presentation, but I've prepared a PowerPoint photo show for you, which shows that where I came from, the Australian country girl from the southwest of Victoria, Australia, the wheat plains and the country life I had amongst the chickens, pigs, cows, horses and many, many sheep, and then made it to through boarding school to university, to a very international context of many students from all over the world, as well as migrant children in the happy days of free university education in Australia. And then when I took off to travel the world on the backpacker trail, catching my very first international flight, one-way ticket to Singapore, and then emerged in England. And I finally made it to Turkey, so I can tell you much more about those stories if you ask me questions. In Bodrum, after many years of tourism, I got involved in more information dispersal or distribution through newspapers, English newspapers, and also through volunteer groups such as Bodrum Humanity, the original Bodrum Habitat International, 1996 onwards, and also Internations, the social networking group, and of course now Bodrum H3A. So enjoy the slides and I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Chris, that was a great snapshot of the contrasts from your early life. I was particularly struck by the passion with which you spoke of discovering international people, if that's the best way to put it, in your university days. And that has clearly been a passion of yours that's driven you forwards. But can I take you back to those first days in Istanbul? What do you think are the most striking memories and contrasts of the Turkey of 1985 and the Turkey that you see today?
Landing in Istanbul, we came by bus. I mean, the first impression was unloading a bus at the border, customs going through, loading the bus up, going back through the Turkish border, and then loading the bus and unloading it to the customs. So it was all, that first thing was bureaucracy, I suppose. It was just as well I'd never seen Midnight Express, I must say. I didn't see it for years. And then we came into a very dark night in the old bus station. What was it called? What's the old bus station called? It's gone. And it was a muddy field.
Topkapı.
Which one?
Topkapı it used to be, I think.
Yeah. And somehow we found ourselves on a bus down to Sultanahmet. It was very dark. There were soldiers on the street. It was still immensely exciting. So it was quite in a way, forbidding way to arrive. But the next morning, as I said, the whole sounds of Turkey broke upon us. The mosques, the people calling out Simit, the noise, everything. It was just so alive. And that's what I carry with myself through Turkey now. It's just a very vibrant, lively place. You might, the mosque might be too loud, the traffic might be too loud, too many people shouting, but it's immensely alive. I have to say. And that's one thing that takes me through to now. Okay, it's a bit quieter, it's a bit more organized than 1985.
Wonderful. When we were talking earlier yesterday, you had some dates and you said November 1985 was your first experience in Istanbul, but you had three other very, very specific dates. If I can remind you, the 19th of March 1987.
Yes.
And the tagline of that one was "That Man." Then 22nd of February 1997, party number 1, and the 5th of April 1997, party number 2. Can you tell us a bit more about all that?
Well, I had got to a point in Melbourne that a job had finished, a contract, and I thought I must do that Mediterranean summer and get that man out of my head type of thing. So I got on the flight, but there was only flights to Athens at that point. Istanbul was very difficult to reach. So I flew into Athens and then took the ferry, I think, the ferry down to Kos, and then tried to find a ferry across to Bodrum. It was howling, snowy, cold weather. Athens was in snow, Istanbul was in snow, the whole of Turkey was under snow, and there was a gale warning at Kos. But somehow, and I think it must have been one of our venerable captains, had a goulette that was still running as a ferry across to Kos to Bodrum. So I found that and got on the next morning. So came into Bodrum via the castle, and it was so cold. That night or the next night, we were on a yacht and there was snow on the yachts in the marina in Bodrum. So when people say it's not possible this cold weather this year, I say it's possible. It's very possible. And so 10, 12 years later, we decided to get married finally. And because my family had conflicting dates, Varda came out to Australia and we got married in a vineyard in February. More extreme weather because that was extreme weather. It was 42 degrees on that day in February, and Varda remembers chasing flies away like that all day. But it was we had a lunch and with my family and lots of friends, so we had a lovely day. And then of course we came back to Bodrum, and our marriage registration in Melbourne had caught up with us in Bodrum, and we got the red book and had a party in the castle. Bodrum was, of course, archaeologist, and Orsbay, the director, and we had an afternoon cocktail in the castle, except it rained and it stormed and it thundered. So we all left feeling very wet and bedraggled by the end of that. But it was a long party. So that was our 2 weddings. After that, we've kept going in Bodrum.
I'm wondering, can we meet that man briefly? Can you introduce us to him? Is he there?
Is Mr. Berkaya? He's roaming around at the moment.
Okay.
Listening in.
Okay, perhaps we'll see him later. You tell us how the dawn of tourism and package holidays was starting to happen in Turkey. I think you must have some amusing stories about the things that were happening in tourism in those very early days.
Well, I've got someone here online who's even started earlier than me, Marga. But yes, it was incredible. Firstly, when I went for the interview, it was all word of mouth, and I went for an interview down at Yeşil Marmaris was the office, the agent at that point in Ataturk, and Nilüfer Hanım was the manager. Nilüfer is the wife of Mahmut Captain. They've just closed the restaurants.
Yep.
Nilüfer was a very formidable woman running the agency side, and Liz was the manager for Sunmed, interviewing recruits. And I had gone along thinking it was for transfer reps, and we're halfway through the interview and she says, so you'll be available to go down to Marmaris tomorrow? And I went, what? Oh, you're going to be a full-time rep. So off I went. And I think it was just getting on this roller coaster of learning how to speak on transfer buses, to do presentation meetings, welcome meetings, and problem solving. And the people who came were all very curious about Turkey, but there's some amazing misconceptions. I was on the bus, transfer bus from Dalaman, and someone said, why are all those women in the fields in colour? Surely they should be in black. And I'm thinking, I think you think this is Greece? And they thought they were in Greece. Which island are we on? No, you're in Turkey. It's not an island. What's that noise from that tower? It's a mosque. It's the mosque. You had to really explain people step by step because they had no idea about Turkey. Absolutely none. So it was a great pleasure to get all these people arriving some were quite apprehensive in the first year, and send them off to Ephesus or Pamukkale or around on the boats, the gulets, and they actually went home having a wonderful time. They went home brown, relaxed, and we'll come back next month, we'll come back next September, so on. And they did. People really came for 30 years running. I kept seeing the same people. And some, of course, came and lived here. Yeah.
Yeah. As you did.
Colin, Colin, after that question, we'll have a break for 5 minutes, then we carry on with your questions and later with the questions and answers part, okay?
Okay.
My best story was being on office duty in Ataturk Caddesi, and we had a lot of young people coming on holiday, and 2 young men wandered into the office and sat down, and I said, how are you going? How are you finding your holiday? Oh, good. Except you didn't tell us that we should put water in the raki. I said, I don't remember telling you to drink raki. They'd had a bit of adventure the night before drinking straight raki. But I don't think that stopped them, because the next day one of them came in and he looked a bit worse for wear. And I said, where's your friend? I think he's in hospital. I said, what happened? Oh, he fell over in the shower and bumped his head. We had more raki, you know. I was like, oh my God. So, of course, Bodrum Hospital wasn't too flash at that point. So it was 14 beds, I think, with, as Annie said the other day, they used to move the blood around on the floor. So it was a place we got people out. Our wonderful doctor at that point, Dr. Füssen Karakaya, would operate on people in their rooms, in their hotels, preference to going to the hospital. She was a diamond. She only retired last year or 2 years ago. She was the very best person. I think Margot and Sue would agree. You've met Dr. Füssen Karakaya. She was wonderful. And she had a clinic in her office. And you take people in there above the guarantee bank where it is now. And you go in there and the people were on drips in there. There were people lined up with medications. She was a hospital in herself. She's amazing.
Wonderful. Did you want to stop for a break, Didem? Is that what you said?
Let's go ahead with one more question, then we'll stop for a break.
So really, I wanted to start moving on to the Bodrum Observer. I mean, I'm trying to get a picture of what was happening in Bodrum that prompted the start of your Bodrum Observer.
I think go back to 1996 when we started Bodrum Habitat. And I mean, the luminaries, Senmez Hanım, Lon, Turulaja, different people like that who'd actually been in the first formation of the committee with the mayor about, I mean, the foreign population then was starting to grow. And Turulaja wanted people to be more involved in local life, which was a good question. And there were Habitat at that point with the UN conference in Istanbul had allocated Bodrum to be one of the trial towns, Habitat International, which is about making life a bit more democratic perhaps, or involved. And there were different COSA, they called them, like committees. So one was environmental, one was about town planning. Obviously Lon was interested in the environmental one, and Turul decided to do an international one. So we started there, and that got people involved in Turkish lessons, in working out cooperatively residence permits problems. Does that sound familiar?
Indeed.
And then we decided we should be giving back, and Christmas Fair was brought up as a means of raising money, and in partnership with Çağdaş, Yaşama Destekli Dernek. And that's what we did. And we had a Christmas fair, and people were astonished at that point that foreigners were doing something and raising money to share in the community. It was quite a turning point.
Fantastic. Can you remind me what year was that?
1996, 97, that started. 1996, 97.
Okay. Back. Chris, I'm struck by a second thing. In your preamble, you were clearly...
One moment, we have a visitor.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you, and I'm very happy to see your group here. And Chris is talking when I come home. I like to say you hello, and then I'm very happy to see your group like that.
He will do one. He will do a presentation one day.
Please do. We would love that. We would love that.
Good. Enjoy it.
We would love that. So I was struck, as I said, you suddenly started you talk with passion, but your passion increased when you talked about the international group that you started engaging with in university. But I noticed something else. You've spoken one word with equal passion just now, and that's community. That's clearly very strong in you. You believe in that, and that must be the case because Bodrum Echo, you've got the Bodrum Observer, Internations, H3A, particularly Bodrum Humanities, which I know you're heavily involved in all of those. And I'm also interested to hear that many of these groups involve similar people, just a different mix. Can you tell us how all this fits together.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. I think I was really impressed, and at times because of my workload I couldn't help Selçuk Şahin and the founders, Christine Davies, Linda Bennett, to found H3A in 2010, though Selçuk had written and he'd talked with us about it. He'd written a whole article about it in the Bodrum Observer in 2006 and 2007. So, and Tony Marcinek, that sort of vision of having activities continuing on for all ages. And there was very little in the way of volunteer activities at that point. You worked, you went home, you went to the family or your neighbours, that was it. There was talk about a library, sports, but I think the vision of H3A has really taken off wonderfully. Going from that, it was, from my point of view, I got more involved in the information side with firstly Bodrum Observer and then Hurriyet Daily News. We had our section in Hurriyet Daily News, a weekly supplement for it's called the Southwest. So I kept investigating what was happening in the area, in the community. But the international and what I call and I say international because I noticed even then so many Turkish people were coming back from overseas to live in Turkey and bringing a whole different framework to life in Bodrum. Bodrum was really shifting from 2005 onwards, I'd say. I would have said, as when we were working as reps, we were the first or among the first women to drive cars and to drive motorbikes around Bodrum, which was a bit startling, perhaps to some people. One of the Bodrum girls, she was born in Bodrum. She was in the first car hire company in Bodrum. She said she was probably the first girl in Bodrum who got her driver's license. You don't think about that now, so. But going on internationally, I would think the main shift, and this is where Bodrum Humanity comes in, is that Bodrum moved from a village to a community, a larger community. Therefore, you have to get some bigger compass to help each other, to support each other. So whether it's in a social sense or whether it's in aid or whether it's educational, this tutoring. So I think all three, Bodrum Humanity, Bodrum H3A and Internations, all support that same aim, but from different directions.
Great, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Can I move on now to your passion for travel, which was clearly born in you right from Australia days? Of all the places you've been to in Turkey, can you tell us which one impressed you the most and why?
Oh, I feel I haven't seen enough. I still, because of working every summer, haven't got to the Black Sea, which I'd really like to see. 3 years ago, with a small group with Annetta, German Annetta translator. She was writing a book about a place called Çukurca. I have the book. In Hakkari province, just a few miles off the Iraqi border in the mountains. We went down in we flew to Van and then drove in a van through these amazing mountains down to Hakkari and Chukucha, and were welcomed. They had no hotel. We all were billeted to different houses. And we went to a wedding and we met the governor and we were walked around the hills there, and we just so far, literally as far from Bodrum as you can imagine, but also in their life experience, the geology, the geography of it, and it was the most beautiful place. They were very welcoming, of course, visitors. And the amazing part was, when we were there on the Sunday, this whole busload of people from Ankara, Turkish group, turned up for breakfast at Chukucha. They were doing a tour as well. One of the university alumni groups were exploring Turkey too. And that was so impressive. The mountains, the snow. We went through a pass where the snow was still 2 meters high. But I would love to go back to Cappadocia. Cappadocia is truly impressive. I went there about 15 years ago for the first time. I've been there twice. I worked in Kalkan one summer, and I love those Taurus mountains to go up. But you keep thinking I'll go to the main places, but then you want to fill in the gaps. Going to my husband's family's ancestral home around Lake Ereğli, Yalvaç, Isparta. That's absolutely beautiful area. That we saw in spring and autumn. They're beautiful areas. I always feel that Turkey has got so much more to offer. You could keep traveling around and see so many details. And of course I go to the ancient sites as well. So the geography, the differences in the variety of landscapes fascinates me. So I'm just being tempted into going back to the Anzac ceremony at Gallipoli, at Çanakkale this year, because there's going to be so few people, possibly 100. And I've been there when there's 20,000 people back in 2010, before the 2015 centennial. And I'd really like to see it on a small scale.
Wonderful.
Colin, can we just ask Colin, can we just stop you for a little while and ask to the audience if they have any questions to ask before we come back to you?
Okay.
Please let me know with the yellow hands if you have any questions to ask to Chris or making any comments. Yes, please. Your voice.
Hello, Chris.
Hi, Phil.
Chris, hello.
We can hear you.
First, want to thank you for 3 things. All this service with the charities which you do, and for Bodrum Echo. I'm sure everyone, even I, sometimes learn the news from Bodrum Echo with your nice and very correct comments, okay? And the third one is also about the internations. I want to thank you. That's a great organization and you do a lot, I know. So thank you for all of that. I'm very happy to see you every time.
Thank you.
And the question is, by the way, how is your Turkish? We never spoke in Turkish.
That is my weakness. How many times I've started Turkish lessons. When I first came here, there was nobody that I knew of that I could find was teaching Turkish. And so in the first year I was here, I just picked it up. It was literally knife, fork, plate, go, come, and bus driver Turkish. So in the tourist years, it became a very much Tarzan Turkish. And then we started sharing the other English people here started sharing their idea of Turkish, which all came to light when we actually found Tömer would send a teacher down from Ankara to Bodrum to test if there was enough interest in running formal Turkish Tömer classes. So this poor lady, who was a wonderful woman, Aisha, started, and she said, "You've all got the same strange way of using Turkish." So we had to literally undo our Turkish. So we were doing very well, but of course everybody did it in winter and then stopped in summer. So, but it was also the Turkish classes were responsible for us to get together and talk about starting news in English. And I actually went backwards. That was my peak time of my best Turkish. And I went back and discovered my English writing and discussions when we started a newspaper. But I keep trying, don't we, Ali? We start Turkish lessons at Bodrum Humanity. I haven't been able to get to the H3A Turkish conversation, which is probably something I should do. And I've been through, during the lockdowns, I had some Turkish tutoring from Reyhan, who tried her best with me. But yes, it's on the list. It's still on the list to learn much better Turkish.
Thank you, Chris. Now it's Ümit Samanlı. Your comment or your question, please.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm a new Bodrumer by settlement, but I was there first in 1971, and I was just wondering what really fascinated you in Bodrum to decide to settle there when the second time you arrived in Bodrum. Was it Bahadur Bey, or was it a sort of magnetic thing that I keep feeling in Bodrum that drew you there? Or was it the lively international community which might have been there existing at that time? I'm not sure. Could you be more specific about that?
Yeah. I think a lot of people find when they first come to Bodrum, you either have a wonderful experience introducing yourself there or not. And the funny thing is, my first 8 months, 6 months in Bodrum, when I got here on that wintry day, was that Bahadur was actually sent to Italy to go with an archaeological exhibition, and he stayed away 6 months. So I was actually just by myself, really. So I met people on my own terms and worked out. I had a few friends, common friends, but actually it was a very interesting experience just being in the town. Of course, actually there weren't so many international people. I met a lot of Turkish people. I have to say the center point of social life was Jazz Cafe, if anybody ever remembers that. And I've seen some of those friends today that we all met when we were much younger. And I worked with the people who were in the tourism and travel, and we're all very young and Turkish, international. It was extraordinarily exciting time. None of us got much sleep, I think. I'll have to take that to Sue. Did you get much sleep?
Okay, may I ask another question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was it? I caught up that you were a biologist or botanist?
Botanist, yeah.
Botanist and a geographist.
Yeah.
Do you specifically find Bodrum? Probably you do. Botany-wise, I would love to hear what you think about living here as a being in nature.
Well, that was one of the things that really attracted me to Bodrum. From way back during my cities in Melbourne life, I'd always said I would not actually want to live in a city for a long time. So Bodrum, having access and the villages and the hills, we went for walks, we went exploring. I mean, a lot of it really fitted my idea of how I'd like to live, that there's always something to find. And the Mediterranean botany of the area actually overlaps with some of the Australian botany. So the plants in Australia, the things that grow here are actually weeds in Australia. So it was interesting recognizing some of the smaller plants that grow here. And also I'd worked with some Greek people in Melbourne, and they'd introduced me. They'd brought to lunch, the work lunch, they brought dolmas and spanakopita and all these things. And their mothers went out hunting in spring. They went out looking for the wild greens. Now, this was really fascinating to me then. We were working in a botanical park at that stage, so we were all looking at botany from an environmental point of view. But our Greek friend was saying, no, my mum goes out collecting weeds. You can't spray them. So it was a whole different perspective. I was getting a Mediterranean perspective before I came to Turkey, and a lot of it made sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Dunlop, it's your turn now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Chris. I remember the Bodrum Observer days, and the Bodrum Observer stopped, and then Bodrum Echo started. And Chris is one of the most modest people I know, because I think every person that moves to Bodrum would be lost without the Bodrum Echo. Yeah. But I always want to know, how do you get all that information, Chris? I mean, do you go out looking for it? Do people come to you? It just fascinates me. I think, how did Chris know that? So that's my question. How do you do it?
I think it's maybe I have to thank my husband, who's just delivered a cup of tea to me, that I learned early on the framework, because he worked in the official capacity. So I learned the framework of Bodrum bureaucracy, what's the Kaimakam, what's the Beledia, what's the roles there, that sort of thing. We met a lot of enormously talented people. We've met the archaeologists who come here, and also just being non-stop in a tourism capacity, the questions people ask you constantly. And that was also history, but why is that happening, this sort of thing. So you got used to being, and perhaps I'm an inquisitive person anyway. Why does that work? How does that happen? Why do people do this? So also, because I was fortunate enough to meet people early on, perhaps I've seen them grow into different roles and caught up with them, what happened. Of course, once we started with Bodrum Observer, it became a much more formal thing. And the most extraordinary thing happened when we started Bodrum Observer. We didn't think that we'd have any official recognition. I mean, we had to register the paper with the Adlier, the prosecutor, and so on. But the thing that happened, that as we were printing our first issue, was the Kaimakam at the time, Abdullah Kalkan, turned up at the printing office and thought it was an amazing thing to do. And he turned up with a journalist. The Kaimakam was going around all different workplaces to introduce himself, and he came with a journalist. The next day we were in the Milliyet, the Hurriyet, every paper across the country, and we're getting calls like, who are you? What are you doing? What's happened? So we immediately ended up on the press list for a whole lot of things. So our email, and it was all by email. This was there was only perhaps chat rooms by then. So it was all by email press list. So we ended up getting a barrage of information. So I knew where the sources of information, who did what. I met the journalists around Bodrum, and well, we knew a few. So it's a very accumulative process, and knowing where to look for information as much as anything. But I still go to Bodrum Echo group myself. There's so many different experiences now that people want to do. I mean, you look at today's list of questions. What's your best stock sales thing? So, and the next question is, what was it? Oh, babysitting prices. So it's an amazing, diverse community. I think it's just taking notice of what's around you and sharing it.
And my last question, Chris, is do you ever sleep?
Do we sleep?
I don't think you do.
We sleep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we are now back to Colin for the last 10 minutes of our session. Colin, we are with you.
Okay, you've given us a wonderful picture there, Chris. And this is a question, apart from drinking raka with water is probably better than drinking it without, what's the one thing that you feel that you wish the world knew about Turkey?
Well, I wish there was a lot more appreciation for the people who live in Turkey. I mean, every country is coloured by its politicians, perhaps, but I think I'm very happy to have introduced a lot of people to Turkey, that the actual customs, the people's hospitality, how easy it is to travel and how much there is to see, that people have, and the food. I have a great story. My sister came with two friends and they were backpacking probably back in 91. And I went off with them. We were planning to go to Egypt, but it was the time of Kuwait, so we decided not to leave Turkey. So we had the great Mercimek Çorba tour of Turkey. So we went off to see the food. We started from Ephesus with very mild çorba, and we ended up in Diyarbakir with the hottest. We didn't go to Antakya. We probably could have got hotter, but we called it the Great Çorba Tour of Turkey. And we got to Nimrut and Malatya and Cappadocia then. And I think, and the boy who was with my sister, he said, he's a pure farmer. He said, you know, the lamb chops are really good here. It was a complete revelation to him that he thought he was going somewhere really spooky foreign place. He'd just come from England and he had the time of his life. He had the best food and lots of fun. And it's just trying to get that point across to people how much Turkey can offer for a visit and a travel is food, wine, sights, variety, and so on.
And many of us are enjoying those. Can I ask you now, this is a bit of a tough question, Chris, but where do you personally feel that you belong?
I think it's a bit like Sliding Doors. Did you see that film?
Ah, yes, I did indeed.
I can step off the plane in Australia and feel immediately back in Australia. And I step off the plane back in Istanbul and I feel I'm immediately back in Turkey. So I've spent half of my life in each place. I will wander around Melbourne and say tamam to somebody and think, oh. It's a very difficult questions. They're so different. I think you probably all feel it. You go somewhere where you've lived a long time and you feel immediately comfortable. You might go back to the States or England or wherever, and you know how it works. So you fit in somehow. There's always a degree when people start talking to you, like in Australia, they'll ask the same question. So Australia's better, isn't it? You think, well, not on all points, you know, you have, and of course in Turkey will ask you, so Turkey's better. So you have to actually be diplomatic. But I feel very comfortable here. I feel probably because it's Bodrum, I sort of understand. I've stayed with friends in Antalya. I've worked a winter in Istanbul and found my way around there, but that's a tough city. That's a tough city to live in. And it was winter, of course. So I know everybody finds their niche, and I think I've found my niche here.
Right. Good answer. So I know, as has been said already, you are a very modest but a very energetic person. Can I ask you to declare what is out of your many achievements, what's the one that you are most proud of?
I think Bodrum Observer was the crucial point where I found my groove, if you say, because I've been in tourism. Tourism was something not planned. I surprised myself having to stand up in front of people with basically a meeting. You would never have found me in front of 50 people giving a meeting in Australia. And suddenly that's your job. You have to go and do it now. That was a shock. So the Bodrum Observer was a very critical thing that I got to and did. And my mother actually said, when I told her, that she said, oh, I always thought you should be a journalist. It was like apparent to her. So it was probably my proudest achievement, even though that was when I really didn't sleep. I didn't sleep much then. It was 2 years of incredible things happening, but there. So I've slowed down since then, happily.
And that brings me on to, I was messaging with Susan just before we started this, and one of the basic question is, Chris, how do you find the time to do all these things? She referred to you as the Wikipedia of Bodrum. How do you divide your time up with all these things that are going on?
Well, I don't think I'm terribly organized, but I do sort of mentally just do things as they come along, or I have my weeks bookended, put a few things in. I would like to do a bit more gardening at the moment.
Aha. Okay, and that brings me on to my final question. What next? You've achieved a lot, but what's in your hopes and dreams that you would really like to achieve?
I think COVID's really reinforced my urge to travel.
Ah, the travel has come back.
Yes, yeah. So whether it's in Turkey or I really haven't seen a lot of Europe in the last 30 years. And at one stage, the great backpacker dream was to get to France. I'd studied up on my French, but I've probably been in Paris for 3 days. That's it. So there's a lot to see out there.
There is. So more travel.
That's one thing. Yeah.
Good.
And another is to write more and perhaps do, I don't know. How much can I write, Nafis? Or Bob? Where's Bob? I'll have to join the writing group more regularly at page 3A with Martha.
You will. It would be lovely to see you there.